Hello everyone, welcome to a new review, this time about the Brave units. As per usual, I'll be going from worst to best, starting with Alm. Now, Alm is the worst of the banner in general because sword infantry units are extremely saturated. So there are plenty of units that can do more or less what he does, if not better. He does have one niche because of Sand Scale, however, and that niche is still quite strong. However, outside of that niche, he's not that great. If all you bring to the table is just having a whole lot of attack, it's not great. Not to mention his stat line is nothing really new. It's basically the Soleil stat line, and guess what? Soleil is a 3 to 4 star unit, while E is a 5-star exclusive unit. A red 5-star exclusive unit as well. Red units being so hard to pull, it's kind of a problem. I don't have the rate added here, but they should be literally the same as the last banner. So, yeah, that gives you an idea. Since the last banner, we haven't gotten a demote. It's literally the same thing. So, let's talk comparison. What a surprise, Soleil is here. Keep in mind one thing about Soleil, however, she has an overall better offensive stat line because she can get 10 Dragon Flowers, while Alm can only get 5. So as a result, Soleil kind of just gets an extra attack and speed point overall. So, yeah, that's kind of a problem in itself. Second, if you're going to go for a defensive set, you'd be surprised to realize that, well, Soleil can more or less do the same thing. As a matter of fact, it's so similar, you shouldn't even really consider doing it on Brave Alm, unless you plan on plus 10ing him because you really like the character, though if that's what your reasoning is, you should be doing Legendary Alm, not this one. Because at the end of the day, with a Heartblade set, now Heartblade is a better weapon overall than Alm's. I'll explain why after I explain just how much that you can get with it. Without being paired with Marth or any such unit, you can actually push your stats to about 53 def and like 55 res with Soleil, I believe. Or 54 def actually, and 56 res. Whereas Alm gets to 57 def and 55 res, with basically the same type of set. Yeah, the difference is not really existent, is it? That's kind of just how things are, I suppose. So yeah, the difference is basically non-existent. It's not exactly worth to go for a 5-star unit red exclusive, which probably cost about 2,000 orb to plus 10 on average, because you will get pity fisted literally 6 times out of 10, if not 7. Maybe even, no, not 8, but yeah, like maybe about 7 out of 10, 6.5 maybe. Which, yeah, that sucks already, but then you realize it's not even that much better to a 3 to 4 star unit, which you probably have a few copy of as books. Soleil is a very good unit overall, to be fair, so there's that. Still, honestly, if it wasn't for Sand Scale, Alm would be useless. Which is, I guess that's the main reason why every time a winner like a top 1 gets the sword. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me reiterate. Whenever there's a top 1 in one of the division, it's always a sword. It feels like, because they need to take the sword and give it a unique skill in order to make the unit feel even decent. Imagine Alm without Sand Scale. What happens? It would literally be worse than 90% of the sword unit of this game, because he literally would have nothing demarking himself from most unit. Hell, even with Sand Scale, he actually runs into problem. Sandscale, for example, does not allow him to really run Gale Force all too well, which, yeah, that's kind of a problem, because he ends up hitting too hard with it. Sometimes even one-shotting, and as a result doesn't get to proc Gale Force because you only get 2 out of 5 charge. That's awkward in itself, but then you add to the fact that the way the weapon works, you can't even use it defensively either, because, and here's why Heart's Blade is better, your enemy needs to outnumber you. So that means if you have, say, a unit around you that provides you buffs, like Melkorin or Marth, typically you'll be not exactly outnumbered. You won't even tie them, you will actually outnumber them because all will count your unit. And the way it works is it's within 2 space toward Alm, enemy included. So the enemy that are counted are within 2 space of Alm. Typically only one of them is going to be on there, not 2. So as a result, unless he's alone, the 5 across the board will not proc. If the 5 across the board doesn't proc, the weapon is reduced to a 3-attack beat stick that kills dragon. So basically a silver sword powered by the power of Naga. With attack refine. That's just 1 less attack overall. It's not great, is it? So, it's definitely awkward, and as a result, you can't even buff Alm. He basically tends to have to be solo if you want to have any kind of enemy phase. And on player phase, he tends to do more damage for Gale Force. So, yikes! You can't even build him defensively. Well, you can build him defensively, but Soleil will outshine him always, or not exactly outshine him, but do so similarly that you might as well not even bother, unless you have him already at +10, in which case, well, I guess might as well. And on the other side, you have BK Crom, a unit that gets 5 across the board, but with no condition that is nearly as annoying as Alm, because the 5 across the board happens the second he has 1 less than full HP. That's right. Instead of having less than full HP as a requirement, they went with this awkward, can't have any support whatsoever effect. That doesn't synergize with its kit whatsoever with Gale Force at all. What were they thinking? Alm and Camilla's set are both so awkward and so mismade, it hurts. It really does. Honestly, base Alm is probably a better dragon killer as well, which is honestly awkward to say. Now, BK Crom is slightly worse in stats, however, do not think he's that bad. With speed plus, attack speed solo, you're at 37 speed. Cav, you're at 43 speed. Sealed Falchion, you're at 48 speed. And at 43 speed, it's not really hard to fight to be pushed into Sealed Falchion. You don't really struggle getting to the effect, and the effect can actually be used in tandem with stuff like Marv, with stuff like Brave Lucina, Hilda, and so on, because Crom has that much defense. This gives so much you can do with BK Crom. It's just a lot less awkward to use. If you want to use him on enemy phase, that's fine. You can just use him on enemy phase with buffs. You can't really do that with Alm, so as a result, if it's something like Marth with attack speed, spur attack speed, and spur def res on top of the Falchion, giving him an extra 5 across the board, Crom typically will outshine Alm entirely, regardless of the situation. Unless Sand Skill is in the picture, which is kind of awkward, isn't it? And Sandscale actually provides recoil, which makes the fact that he actually has a def stat kind of redundant. So, yeah. Very awkward unit, like I said. A tank with an A skill that makes him take damage. constantly, so he can't really tank. A tank that can't receive, like, support that actually improve your def, res, and so on. What? How do you function? If anything, being that Alm is the leader of an army, you'd think that Alm would be, oh, I don't know, the complete opposite of the requirement. Kind of like how Erica wants to be alone, despite her entire thing being friendship and everything. Makes sense, right? No, it doesn't. So, yeah. If the weapon was flipped and it was more like, needs to have more unit on your side, kind of like, you know, Legendary Actor, this would have been a fairly good weapon and would have synergized pretty well with a lot of other things. Sadly, that is not the case, therefore Alm is kind of poo. However, there is one set that is kind of his saving grace, which is the set on the right. Now, Sense Scale is on none of the screenshot. That's because Unit Builder does not have Sense Scale up. Why? Don't know. They tend to do their job, but like stop midway for some reason. Like, for some reason, Uber did not have a res refine in the list. For no reason at all. And Sense Scale is not in Alm's kit, despite it being quite a bit now. Like, I'm late to cover this video and it's still not fixed. How the hell? Alright, so the set on the left has a speed boon. Keep in mind, that's so that even if you have someone next to you, you still will get the full 48 speed instead of being at 45, in which case you can be a bit shaky. Still, if you feel like you'll be fine without it, Res Plus is what I would suggest, because his Res is a bit shaky. So yeah. Also, I fucked up and forgot to change the left side. You should have one less in all stats because Dragon Flowers are not supposed to be present. That's my mistake. Sorry about that, guys. I thought I actually fixed it, but I suppose I didn't. So, the set on the left is an AoE set. Mind you, that's nothing new. Quite a few units can do that, and quite a few units can do that better. Marita can actually be extremely deadly, for instance, because she gets to do her AoE and then 2 more hits. If you don't die from the first, she gets to have a second one because her weapon is essentially for SETI. This gives her a lot more damage overall than just getting hit once after an AoE. Still, Alm does have a ton of damage, and Sense Scale true damage is added to the AoE. So typically Alm will do more damage. The problem is that damage tends to be extremely overkill, except for very specific case. Marita will struggle, for example, with Brave Hector. Alm will not. The problem is, like I said, it's very specific case. So for the most part, Marita will do the same, except Marita can also run 4 more set and is a lot more versatile overall. So it's kind of a shame. The second set on the right is the Saving Grace, however. And this one you will want to have Speed Plus because you do not run Greco Falchion. You get rid of that piece of shit and replace it for a Brave Sword. Now Brave Sword will work with Sense Scale or Sken Scale, whatever. That A skill that he has. It does 14 true damage. Through damage you can't guard. Even if you had 99 defense, you would take that 14 damage. So 14 plus 14, that's 28. Take the hit, live it, that's another 14 and 14 right after because you quad. That's 56 damage already. To put it this way, if you're dealing with a unit with 50 defense, you're doing 22-22, get hit, 22-22. And because of the way Wrath works, you get 1 charge at the start, once you're at 75% or less, which could be an idea to run Brazen Attack Speed if you feel like your speed is a bit too shaky. which by the way would also improve the damage Sand Scale gives you, because you'd be at 63 attack. It would improve Sand Scale to 15 damage instead of 14. The way Wrath works, you'll have a cooldown charge -1, which means your Moonbow is at 1 charge. You hit, you proc, you get hit, you hit back, and you proc again. If it's not dead by the time you do your second Moonbow, there's a problem, and you probably have forgotten to give him Sand Scale. Because at that point, if the unit has 50 defense, you will have done about 138 damage with 50 defense as a red unit. And in that you have 20 damage of true damage because 2 Moonbow procs, and 56 true damage because of Sand Scale. In other words, that's 76 true damage. So as long as you live as long as you live long enough to get to your second set of hit, whatever it is probably dead, unless it's something like Arden with 80 plus HP. It is that deadly. And I think even Arden would struggle, though Steady Stance 4 will shut down a good 20 damage because it will shut down special entirely. However, it will not shut down the true damage from Sand Scale, which is pretty good. So yeah, that's basically the one saving grace he has. Keep in mind it's still extremely awkward and your enemy phase is piss poor at best, because you take 7 damage every time from recoil alone. If you're dealing with, say, any mage with 55 attack, you're kind of in a bad spot. Because even here with the 30 res, you're taking 36 damage. Plus 7 damage of recoil, you're at 3 HP, you're just gonna die on the next hit. And 55 attack is not exactly high, so, mages in general will be the bane of your existence. Even Tarja, for example, can one-shot you. Even Nino can do it. Actually, 64. No, she can't. But she gets really close. As in, you're in single digit after the fight. So do be careful. Anyway, we'll move next to Camilla, the most Frankenstein set I've ever seen. So, what's the problem with Camilla? Well, the problem is, first off, 21 def, 25 res, okay? You could just run Sturdy Blow, that's 25-25, half buff like 45 Flyer, 31-31. And with the 39 HP, this is unmerged and you have 70 bulk in both def and res. Actually, you can't run Sturdy Blow, I'm stupid. But all the same, you still have a whooping 66 bulk. 66 bulk. And they decided, oh no, she is too frail. Instead, we shall give her Dazzling Staff as the weapon effect. This sucks, because if it was Wrathful Staff, this weapon could be a decent replacement for a while, but as it is, all it does is take your B skill, because it has Dazzling Staff, an effect that you really don't need. And I know what some of you will think. Razzle Dazzle will be required for her to do damage, so it doesn't matter anyway. See, here's the thing. Attack speed push is not something that you want to run on her, because her speed is already so good. So attack speed push is just ridiculous. That weapon, attack speed push, and then a buff in speed, because Own Flyer is literally 53 speed. You don't need more than 47 speed. You can ditch this and you're at 46 speed unmerged. Why would you run that? how about you just buff up your defense instead and become a lot bulkier? Wouldn't that make more sense? If it was attack def push, this would probably be a decent idea, especially with Wrathful as the weapon. So yeah, first off, the weapon has Wrathful as Dazzling, while it should have Wrathful. 2, you're running attack speed push while you already have way too much speed. 3, you take damage from attack speed push every fight, yet you don't run Martyr to get rid of all of the damage you've sustained constantly. Instead, you have Restore. What? Why? So you have a bad assist. The weapon doesn't have the right effect in the weapon to really function properly. The A skill is buffing one of the 2 stats that it's buffing is irrelevant. Your B skill is luck to Wrathful Staff if you use the staff, because otherwise you don't do squat for damage, which means that the fact that you get the 3 attack and speed don't matter, which makes the weapon essentially a glorified Gravity with Dazzling Refine. Yeah, and then the C skill, instead of it being Speed Tactic, which would have at least been welcome, is a skill that's available on a 3 to 4 star unit and as a seal now. Why? I don't understand. What's the point of this? What do you get from doing this? To me, this is just a really bad set overall. I would have given Speed Tactic, Aerobatics, Wrathful Staff in the weapon, Martyr Plus, and Attack Def Push 4. The whole kit's different. They basically just were like, let's just run a fortune wheel to tell us what fucking assist we put, and a fortune wheel to tell us what the weapon gives. It's just, it's so painful. It will become especially apparent the second that I actually showcase the build that I've made for her, because I don't even use the pref that she comes with. Imagine a pref being dead on arrival. Fucking hell. So, let's move to comparison. First off, I don't really typically do anything like compare a flyer to a cav, but this time it's actually worth mentioning. Veronica is the best Choose Your Legend 2 unit, and most people selected her because, frankly, the other 3 were lackluster. Brave Hector was Lance Armor number 57. Brave Ephraim had a admittedly decent weapon, but overall was just yet another axe armored unit, and I think at that point most people were sick of armored units. So already there you're off to a bad start. Brave Celica was a bit awkward because we didn't have such things as Renewal Seal, which meant that you were required to have a healer to run her, and that was in the time where colorless dual infantry was not a thing, so you were hurting yourself actively by trying to work with what she was meant to work. That was very, very awkward overall. Still, Brave Celica did age pretty well, but the other 2, well, at least Brave Ephraim has fought her, which I'm glad, because Ephraim is probably the worst lord of the series. Moving on. The point I'm getting at is that most people selected Veronica as their free pull. So they already have Veronica. And if no one picked Veronica, if someone did not pick Veronica, they probably summoned for her after realizing that they were getting their ass whooped by her in AR constantly. Okay? So then you come in with Camilla that has a glorified gravity staff with more might, next to Veronica's very broken weapon. What do you think I'm going to say? If I really want gravity, I can run this shit on Veronica. However, Camilla cannot run what Veronica's running. She whiz. Isn't that a bit of a problem? when you are so unoriginal that this happens? Speaking of stupid choice, why is Fjorm a seasonal unit, a random seasonal unit, might I add, getting a pref that actually provide isolation debuff in a line, which is a very, very, very good effect, and would have been fantastic on Camilla instead of a gravity staff, while Camilla gets what she gets. I honestly think their staffs should have been just traded, or at least the staff effects, because oh my god, why? If Fjorm basically came with Camilla's staff, I would just be like, that's a good staff for, you know, lack of options. But I mean, at the same time, her stat line doesn't have an overkill amount of speed, so she can actually use the staff. If she and then you can go attack plus to have more damage. So the speed and the attack of an initiation is actually helpful. The speed is absolutely useless on Camilla. 37 speed is way too much from the get-go. Especially at plus 10 where you have 47 speed with just a buff and merges. Not even a boon or anything. So having extra 3 speed on this is just overkill. However, it's not overkill on Fjorm, which is very helpful. I believe it still has Dazzling Staff as an effect. Maybe I'm wrong, actually. I haven't really seen Fjorm in a while. Let me verify just to make sure. Oh! No, actually, she does have Raffle Staff. This staff is so perfect for Camilla. God damn. Except the fact that it's based on HP. That's a bit awkward for Camilla. Kinda. She only has 3 less HP overall than Fjorm, but honestly, it's still very workable. If anything, what you could have done with Camilla, as a result, if she was to be using that weapon, would be to take one def, one res, and one def, one res, 1 speed, and put it into HP, and there you go. That's it. That's all you would have needed. Then you would basically have a pretty good unit, a very good Choose Your Legend unit. But because what we get is just a glorified gravity, I can't really say that you're going to be using that staff all that much. Which is a shame, because as much as I don't like Camilla, I can't deny that this art actually looks really pretty. And not lewd, which is a nice change. Oh well, I suppose disappointment knows no bounds when it comes down to, well, this. Fjorm basically is a better unit in most scenario than Camilla. Camilla is a beastly stat line, but that's all she has going for herself. And that's kind of just mediocre in many ways. However, let's move to the build. As you can see, I'm using what you want. And as you can see, our stat line is quite good. 37 def and 37 res, with 66 attack and 47 speed. Like I said, her speed is quite overkill at this point. So that's why you kind of just don't touch it, because at that point you're already fine in speed. So yeah, what you want? This staff is literally better than any pref we've gotten except Veronica and Fjorm's pref, as far as staffs are concerned. It is just that good. Shutting down special, especially for a flyer, is really good because you have access to skills such as aerobatics, flyer formation, wings of mercy, and escape route. So you can just teleport across your units essentially to just kill whatever unit it is. If say all of your other units are hitting death, like a bow unit and so on, you can just teleport to them to kill a heavy death unit but with low res, very easily. You can even take damage and be fine. Say you take a hit from someone with 60 attack. Well, you still have 20 death left. And with 66 res, even if they have 30 res, or even 40 res, you do 50 plus damage. You're basically a colorless mage that teleports across the map, shuts down specials, resets specials, and on top of this, can heal herself through Martyr. Yeah, like I said, her stat line is quite strong, and if you really abuse it, you get quite a lot out of it. And Ground Orders is also fantastic. Keep in mind that this combo of aerobatic and Ground Orders can still work in a flyer team. It just means you need to run flyer formation instead with air orders, instead of Ground Orders. It's just that good. It's just such a shame that, well, any other unit can basically run this. However, our stat line is actually the only one strong enough to pull this stuff up. So, I mean, there's that. Moving on at least to the better units, however, let's start with Micaiah. Now, Micaiah is a strange case. Light Up Down is a double effective between dead content and armored units. The only cavalry units that you actually want the effectiveness against are units that typically just shuts down your chance of hitting back, which means your res become useless. To some extent, you just take the hit, I guess, which is not great. Other than this, it basically has the Saizo effect. However, if I'm being honest, Saizo is overall better off. I'll explain why I say I genuinely do think Saizo is in a better situation than Micaiah at using this effect, despite it being a strong effect. Kind of funny though that they're using this whole penalty doubler, because, I mean, I designed this shit months ago, and now, like, 4, 5, 6 months after I've designed and made a video on it, it pops up on Saizo and then it pops up again on the Choose Your Legend unit. Okay, yeah, I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm just overthinking things. Anyway, so the weapon gives also res, which is not too great, but I mean it's something and can definitely help for the set I have in mind. Now, attack res bond 4. This is good. This is basically just more stats, and it also nullifies debuffs. However, it does not nullify panic. So for example, if you have 6 attack buff and it gets -6, you get rid of the -6, but you don't get back the 6 attack. Which is kind of a shame, but it is what it is. That's the same way as it works with Idun, for those who didn't know. Yune's Whisper is... well, it depends. It can be a very good B skill overall, because you can actually combo it with Death Ploy and Rest Ploy to debuff all stats. However, considering it has the same condition as a certain very annoying pain in the dick character, also known as Aversa, typically it's more so just run Aversa. And, you know, that's kinda it. Her stat line is quite good to work off with this weapon and this B skill, however, since, you know, her speed is actually very workable. She's also a flyer, which means own flyer is quite easy to get by and, you know, buff her speed up. I'm saying this because a whole lot of people look at her stat and are like, ah, wow, attack and res are so good, and just miss the whole point of her speed being this good. But I mean, that's just how it is. As far as comparison goes, the only comparison you can really make is ironically Yune. They have very similar stat line, it's just that Micaiah has extra attack, since every single Choose Your Legend unit have Choose Your Legend BST, and Sigrun too, for no goddamn reason. So, Overall, Micaiah is just better stat-wise, and I genuinely do think that, unlike Yune, Micaiah has a way better debuff to work with. Yune's debuff might be a C skill, but the second the map is vertical, she's basically worthless. She can't get a debuff off. So then she's reliant on your other party members, and then, well, she kind of blows. She was made with AR in mind you, but that's still not too great. So she's definitely in a better spot as a result. So talking about builds, this one is pretty quick. Like I said, Def and Resploy with Yune's Whisper is a good way to be self-sufficient. Sturdy Impact on top of Defploy, Resploy, and everything. Let's just put it this way. You're at 27 Def and 50 Res. Sturdy Impact makes that 37.50. Def Resploy makes that 42.55. Okay? So, at that point, 42 Def, you tend to have a pretty solid grasp to just be able to tank stuff. But better than that, because of Yune's Whisper, the 41 Def that you see here jumps up to 47. And because your enemy loses 6 speed, it might as well be at 53 speed. If you think that the speed is too high, because I was considering the speed with Aversa in mind also for the second set, because that way you can actually work with multiple teams. Change the speed IV to a Def IV, because that way you have 45 defense, which is pretty much your worst stat at that point, and still 50 speed. The problem also that you run into without speed plus is that if you don't get Yune Whisper off, you're looking at only 38 speed. 38 speed is not great. You will not be doubling much units, and you'll be in an awkward position. Keep in mind that the fact that your B slot is overtaken by a debuff means you don't have skills such as Mystic Boost, such as Desperation, so you can't go for multiple fights in a row, which is a bit awkward and annoying to work with. Other than this, however, it's a fairly good weapon, but like I said, Aversa is your best friend. If you reverse buffs, you actually get those buffs into debuff, and those debuff are increased stats. So for example, if your enemy has something like, oh, I don't know, say attack -6 and an attack tactic being panicked, that's 12 attack for you, and they lose 12 attack on top of it. This is insane, because panic buffs are stacking with debuffs, in case you didn't know. So yeah, that actually gives you a whole lot of things to work with. The left set is more based on having support of Aversa, because of panic, because of the fact it does -3 across the board, which means by default you essentially, if you fight someone that's debuffed by Aversa, you're looking at 67 attack, 47 speed, 43 def, and 56 res. So yeah, and that's without panicked buff. Keep that in mind, because panic buff will increase your damage a whole lot. Running her comboed into Aversa in AR is a very, very strong thing to do. Now, I did say Saizo has a better way to deal with this, and the main reason why I say this is because Aversa can panic the enemy, right? And Saizo can attack one with 3 across the board and everything. Is colorless, doesn't have to deal with the combat triangle. Kills one as a result because he gets 6 across the board, on top of probably 6 across the board because of buffs, on top of 6 across the board because probably bonus doubler, so you have 18 across the board. And then he does a debuff of -6 across the board because of the dagger. This is the missing piece that Micaiah does not have. As a result, well, if you're fighting any of the other units, you essentially have plus 24 to all stat because they do 6 to all stat because of the debuff. You get 6 to all stats because of said debuff. You get 6 to all stats because of buff. You get 6 to all stats because of bonus doubler. And if your attack is high enough for Eliwood to give you bonus doubler on top of it, it stacks. So you have 30 across the board. It is insane. Mind you, Micaiah can also run bonus doubler through Eliwood, and she'll have an easier time at it because her attack is quite high. But it's still worth mentioning that Saizo essentially gets 30 to all stats if you can pull it off. That makes him a absolute pain in the dick to deal with once that's off. And he doesn't really struggle pulling it off. That's the thing. Micaiah is reliant on people being next to one another. And to some extent the Aversa combo does too, but if the Aversa combo fails, Saizo still has a second way to work, which is his own dagger. Whereas Micaiah does still have a second thing to work, and honestly, if you're going with desperation and you don't feel too sure, you can still run attack and speed ploy as a result. Which is still a good option to run, because as a result you basically do -5 in both, which is just free. And get 5 to attack and speed. And ploys are stuff you have control over. I know a few people don't like ploys, and I'll explain for those who really like ploys and what's the problem in general with ploys. Ploys are very reliant on res, okay? So to put it simply, if your enemy units and a certain very consistent unit has 37 res at +10, unless you have 38 or more res, it's kind of a pain in the dick, isn't it? The unit I'm talking about is Surtur, and Surtur would not be ployed by most units. So as a result, the ploy threshold, I guess we could say, kind of got pushed to 38 or more if possible. Thankfully, this is actually a threshold that Micaiah does reach easily because of her weapon. And one of the rare times you can actually be happy that you have res +3 on a weapon. Do keep in mind that Yune's Whisper will not work on a Surtur because 40 -3 equals 37. You tie him essentially, so Yune's Whisper will not work. Yeah, that's why sabotage skills are not exactly too interesting and too looked at. It's just because it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. A lot of units just tends to have a good chunk of res, enough res to just not be affected. Now, it's still a decent skill, and I do think sabotage skills are overall very solid, but it is a fact that ploys are basically still the superior ones, and to some extent ruse skills like what Eliwood has or Ursula had. So, you know. Anyway, moving on to the Holy Grail of the banner, Eliwood. I am so glad to say Eliwood is, in my opinion, the strongest unit of the banner. And here's why. I do think he's not going to age nearly as well as Micaiah might, because the main thing that makes him so good is the fact that he has Dragon and Beast Killer at the same time. Beast Killers are not exactly common right now. The only Beast Killer we have are Picnic Flora, Picnic Felicia. Those two units are bad because they're armored. So typically, since Beast units are all over the place, they tend to just have so much movement anyway. Getting to them to kill them becomes a chore and kind of a problem. Doesn't really work too consistently, and on top of that, I'm gonna be honest here, Felicia's color is terrible. Tyburn will absolutely decimate her despite the Beast Killer because of color advantage and way too much attack. In fact, in some cases you can expect him to just one-shot Felicia, which is not great. Not to mention, as far as stat goes, Felicia is honestly a worse Amelia. So, yikes. So, there is that already in the way. 2. Flora is pretty good, but typically why people use her, at least in AR, is for the Cleaner, which is a dagger that uses buff that you use to their advantage. The reason why people use the Cleaner a lot in AR is because typically you have to use a tank in AR because you have to bait the map to start. Honestly, I feel like the way it should work is that people on offense gets the choice whether or not the map should be aggressive on you or not. Yes, this would be a debuff to defenses to some extent. However, it would also be a whole lot more interesting than always having to bait and turning out to have enemy units with 80 to 90 attack just one-shotting your unit or your tank just because haha XD. So, you know. Anyway, with that rant aside, the point is Flora is still armored. Getting to the beast unit is still a problem. The other unit, and she's very recent, is Petra. Petra is solid. The problem with Petra, however, is that she can't hit back if she gets attacked unless she runs close counter. She can very well be a decent close counter user. However, it requires a premium skill to work. Eliwood is not like that. Eliwood is the only beast killer that actually has both movement and melee at the same time. 3 movement means you can just waltz to Tybarn, be like, come to me, boy! Face tank is like 10 or 20 damage hit, and then one-shot him back for like 80 damage. Tybarn is one of the most obnoxious units to deal with. So this Eliwood is absolutely amazing at dealing with one of the most cancer units to deal with, especially in Arena Assault. I invite you guys to, if you have pulled him, to bless him for Arena Assault. You would be a fool not to. Because you will use him at least once per run. If not for Tybarn, for Kangas. Kangas is extremely cancerous because he's a beast unit with basically no weakness. You can just run Volume Shield and all weakness are gone outside of beast killers, which, as I explained, doesn't really have a whole lot good beast killer units, and most of the beast killer units are just random unit that most people will not pull for, like Picnic Flora and Picnic Felicia. Picnic Felicia looks adorable, unlike Flora, but even then, would I pull for her? No. Absolutely not. I would be wasting my orbs to do so. And that would be a mistake. So I'm not, obviously. So, yeah. Ninian's Lance also gives 4 across the board on initiation, which is not a difficult condition to fulfill, unlike which means that you can actually be in range of buffs, and it works just as well. It works against everything. It's basically a non-condition. That said, while the weapon is that good, you may want to replace it. More on that on the build part. So, another thing is that he has Swift Sparrow, so for those who think that Speed Plus is a good idea on him, get some help. Because you have to realize that this weapon plus this A slot pushes his speed already to 46 unbuffed. That's 52 with own cav, unmerged, neutral speed. Honestly, you could even get speed minus and it wouldn't even matter. It's ridiculous. He is actually quite good at it. And on top of that, his lance gives 3 speed, so 35, 38. So Sparrow pushes that to 45. The lance pushed that to 49. Buffs pushed that to 55. So you get speed plus. That's 58 speed. Do you really need 58 speed? I don't think you do. That's just kind of a waste, isn't it? So yeah, it's just not a good idea overall. Rally attack def plus. It's a rally. Now, attack speed ruse is a very broken B skill. I was already also mentioning how ruse skills were really powerful, and how the only reason I would not pull for Ursula for the Death Res Ruse skill is because that's just one of the worst Ruse skill that you can get. Attack speed Ruse is extremely disruptive. Getting rid of 5 attack and speed on your enemy makes your tank a lot better. The fact that it's cardinal with no limit to the direction is insane. That's just basically an extra 5 def, res, and speed for your unit for free. And on top of that, it's a guard effect, meaning that, well, unit don't get charges in battle unless they have something like Special Fighter and so on. But even then, typically, it won't be enough. Or even if you do have it, it won't really make too much of a difference because you get rid of all of the charge still, which is quite a lot. Speed opening finally in the pool since what? Pool Sakura? Style Spring, sorry. Yeah, it kind of took a while. Still, I think the main thing to take away here is that Eliwood's stat line is busted. Not to mention Nini's Ice Lance is fantastic. And it's also a cute reference. It's a cute reference to what most people consider to be Eliwood's canon wife. For those who don't remember, Nini's Grace is Ninian's first dance. It's actually a jewel that she can use to buff your defense and res on the unit that she dances. Nini's Grace is quite literally a gift that Ninian has gotten from her mom, Aenir. So, yeah, you'd think that she would really cherish it. So the fact that she gave something based on it, Ice Lance, which by the way, you know, Ice Dragon, Ice Lance, Nini's Grace, Nini's Ice Lance. It's a huge, that entire weapon is a huge reference to Ninian, essentially. And I adore it. You can just imagine, like, Eliwood has settled down with Ninian, and Ninian made this as a gift for him, or something like that. Since this is basically after the event of FE7. Which is cute. I like this. This is a cute little reference. Anyway, moving on to comparison. So, yeah. When you look at Eliwood next to Finn, what do you see? Same HP, same def, same res, 2 more speed and 3 more attack. Finn is honestly the strongest offensive Gale Force unit that you have on the game outside of potentially Quan, but Quan requires merges to really flourish. So there is that, because his speed is a bit too low at low merges. So the fact that Eliwood just completely breaks him at all, without even IVs in mind, and then you add the fact that he can have IVs on top of it, has an actual pref, unlike my boy, despite the fact that Finn actually very much has a pref in his game, is ridiculous, to say the least. And then on top of it, you have Quan. Now, Quan actually is a more difficult comparison to make. Because Quan has a very good pref. The Gay Ball gives him an extra 5 attack and def, multi-phase. Okay? He ties Eliwood if Eliwood is initiating, of course. I'm just considering the weapon and no other skill in the A, B, C slots. But, yes. So, in other words, Eliwood ties Quan on player phase. Quan still beats Eliwood by 1 attack on player phase. Has more HP. Basically, Eliwood has 6 more res also. But there goes speed. Speed on initiation, he has 10 more speed than him. Now, overall, I would say Eliwood is a better unit as long as he's initiating than Quan. However, on enemy phase, suddenly numbers shifts a little. Quan has 2 less res, but 4 more defense, 4 more HP, 5 more attack, and 6 less speed. Except on high merges, the speed problem is not a problem anymore, because Quan can actually reach a decent amount of speed. Speed plus push that to 32, for example. Then you take own cav, that's 38, then merges to 42, and so on and so forth. Which is, you know, pretty solid, and that's without an A slot whatsoever. At that point, you can just run Brazen Attack Speed and, well, Heavy Blade, and potentially Heavy Blade 4 as an A slot. Which gives him quite a bit of options overall, especially being a very good Gale Force unit. Now, with that said, however, if you're going Speed Plus for him, you'll be going Attack Plus on Eliwood to counterbalance, for example, or Def Plus, and in which case Eliwood is overall slightly better, if not just for the fact that he actually is better on initiation and the fact that he gets a Beast Killer effect on top of it. The Dragon Killer effect, I honestly don't even count it as a positive on a character anymore, just because Naga can fit in most team comp just as well, and provides a buff that provides Dragon Killer. Even Quan can become a Dragon Killer, so it doesn't really matter all that much. It's still worth mentioning, however, because it does not require any positioning, which is good, because considering Cavs have a whole lot of them, a whole lot of movement, sticking them together so you maintain the Dragon Killer buff is a bit difficult. However, there is one thing that's a bit weird on Eliwood, and is the fact that because of the double effectiveness, Gale Force is a bit awkward. So as far as a Gale Force unit is concerned, I do think Quan is slightly better than Eliwood, because he's more consistent. He's more consistent because if he has to deal with a dragon, he can take a hit because he has just so much HP. Unless the unit is something like Fallen Korin or I guess any of the green dragon that are worth something, like Grima. But other than this, he should be fine for at least one fight, and then will be relying on Desperation, Brazen, and so on. So, yeah. Overall, I'd say Quan is barely better as a Gale Force unit, because Eliwood ends up being almost overkill in a lot of matchups. But that's kind of it, really. If those matchups don't show up, Eliwood is just better than Quan, period. And that's insane, considering Quan is actually a very high bar as far as units are concerned. His stat line is very min-maxed in a way that outside of res, he doesn't really have a weakness. So to have a unit that outright outclasses him in most situations is insane. But it's time to talk about sets. So the set on the right is definitely more a set that's for a plus 10 unit, but it's very usable. Believe me when I say this, I did not expect to see a res set work on him, but sure enough, it does. So to put it simply, Berkut Lens pushes that bulk to 46-38. Once you're in Brazen range, which is pretty easy to reach, you're at 46 def and 45 res. Then because of low attack def, you get rid of 3 attack on the enemy side, which indirectly gives you 3 def, 3 res, so you're at 49 def and 48 res. This is extremely bulky, and also because of low attack def, you get 3 attack. Because of Brazen attack res, you get also 7 attack, so you have 71 attack, 45 speed, and 49 def plus 48 res on top of 49 HP. Do keep in mind though, ideally you will want to replace low attack def for low attack speed whenever that gets released, because low attack speed will provide will make so that your speed is more consistent. 45 speed is a bit iffy, but the fact that you get rid of your enemy debuff permanently because of low attack speed and you make them lose 3 speed is more than enough for Eliwood to work. So if you're really going for Berkut's Lens like this, just realize one thing. My dude, low attack speed, wait for it instead of killing for a low attack def. But that's just how I feel personally. If you feel like low attack def is a good worthy investment, well, there you go. Now, why would you want to use Nini's Icelands for a very similar set? The reason is quite simple. Yes, you will lose some bulk. You absolutely will. However, on player phase, you will have more bulk overall than what Brookwood lands offer. This allows you to be a more aggressive unit. However, the main other reason is the Beast Killer. Beast Killer being so good that you kind of want to maintain it. So, like I said, it's a very solid investment to go for this. Ruptured Sky is really good, and I mean, if you don't really have an option outside of this, you can still decide to run Glimmer. His attack is good enough for it. Or Moonbow if you're afraid to deal with very bulky units. So there's that. As for the second build, well, third build rather, this is just a Gale Force set. As I said, however, do keep in mind that this set is a bit inconsistent, at least for modes such as AR and Arena, where Dragon units and Beast unit are a lot more common. As far as PvE modes are concerned, this probably is not a problem, because Dragons are not that consistent. So yeah. In conclusion, 2 units were well built, and then 2 other units are a nightmare on a stick. God damn. I really wish Camilla and Alm were revised, I guess would be the best way, before they were released, because it's so glaring the weaknesses that those have. You have an A slot that makes you take damage, but you need to be above a certain HP threshold, yet you don't have something to heal yourself back up unless you run the lift to serve as a seal. What an oversight. Especially when they know there is a heal that works this way. It is boggling my mind. But yeah, other than this, I suppose this was an hour-long review. Hopefully I did not repeat myself too much, and hopefully you guys will enjoy. I don't have anything else to add, so see you all, and I guess I'll be seeing you all maybe in 24 hours. That depends. I have literally nothing ready to record again. I kind of just worked on this video today. It took me 7 hours to just put all the stuff together, so I have nothing ready for tomorrow, and tomorrow is just as big a day as it was today. Today I ended up buying a fuck ton of stuff, and I had to work on quite a few things. Sorry about that. It's just kind of how it is. But with that out of the way, see you all later. And see you all on Discord, or on the next video, or in the comments, or whatever. Anyway, have a good night, y'all. It's literally 5 AM. I need to sleep maybe an hour before work.